Hey, what's up? This is Logan Mize, and you are listening to TNCRadio.live.
I'm Ron Samuels. We put it in reverse gear so you can enjoy the history of popular music and hear the soundtrack of life Wednesdays at 8 Eastern and 7 Central, right after the train station on TNCRadio.live.
Oh, yes. When you hear that music, you know what time it is. It is Clutch Time Sports, baby. I'm your co-host, Ivan Anderson, along with my main man, Josh Banker. It is a wonderful, fantastic Wednesday night here in Southern California. It's a little chilly. I realize on the other side of the country, you're dealing with some bad weather. I feel for you. We'll be praying for you. And to my wonderful truckers, males and females out there driving the highways, byways, and the freeways, thank you very much for what you do. We appreciate it. And we hope that you love our show when we come on in the evenings to give you a little bit of sports action. Now, my main man, JB, how you feeling today, Jay?
Oh, that's a loaded question. If you're, we talked about this off air before we came on. I actually took a sick day today, and I'm feeling better now. But asked me about 12 hours ago, that was a different story. But good to go for today, and hyped and ready for some Clutch Time Sports right here on TNCRadio.live.
All right, you can say that again. And I have to send a shout out real quick. Today is my lovely bride-to-be of 28 years. Her birthday. Happy birthday, baby. I love you so much. Not doing a lot of celebration because we have kids doing their thing, and it's always some type of sporting event that's going around the Anderson household. But I just wanted to send that shout out to her.
So you guys have been married 28 years. So
28 years, man.
She's what, 40? No, was that it?
I'm not going to say any age, okay? I'm trying to sleep in my bed tonight.
All right.
Oh, hey, we got to go straight to it. We got to go to some NFL, and then we'll get to some Major League. But I'm not Major League. We'll get to some NBA, but we got to go to the NFL right now. As you know, as of Tuesday, the franchise tag was up and running, and who was going to get tagged, and everybody wanted to know was the Baltimore Ravens. Were they going to tag Lamar Jackson? And thus far, they have not done so. And I think the Baltimore Ravens bank made a huge mistake. They let him gamble on himself, and even being hurt, he has won this argument.
What I don't understand, too, Ivan, is that if you're a team that has a proven commodity, especially at the quarterback position, shouldn't it be your top priority to keep that commodity? It's what's interesting is, okay, I can understand if you're wanting to move on from like a Derek Carr, but Lamar Jackson, a former league MVP, Aaron Rodgers, a former league MVP, all guys that are proven winners. I don't understand the inability for some of these teams to prioritize these franchise quarterbacks anymore, especially, I mean, as a 49er fan, obviously I could relate to this a lot because, I mean, look what happened to the Niners in the playoffs this year. I mean, or even really just the entire regular season. Right. I mean, you go out and spend a lot of money on Trey Lance, but, let's just draft the quarterback with our last pick in the draft anyway, just in case. Let's keep Jimmy G just in case. And they had to go to a fourth guy, in the NFC Championship game. So if you have the ability to have a guy like Lamar Jackson, I mean, let's be honest, who else is going to be better?
He's not a Patrick Mahomes, no. But he's one of the top 5 best quarterbacks in the league. And either way you go, you're going to pay this guy. Whether you do a transitional tag, a non-exclusive tag, or regular tag, you're going to pay this guy. And he's out. I mean, right now, I'm sorry, Deshaun Watson set the market. And I know a lot of owners are very angry over the Browns in their guaranteed of $230 million. I mean, it just wasn't a guarantee. It was the greatest guarantees of guarantees that you could have. So Lamar Jackson, if you do a normal tag, JB, he's going to get $47 million because you got to take the first 5 quarterbacks and average it out. If you do I think it's, what is it? Is it the transitional tag that's the top 10 quarterbacks?
Well, either way, imagine you're going to spend 40 plus million for 1 year with a tag.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're gonna invest that much money into one player for 1 year, why don't you invest, let's say, that same amount of money for 4 years or 5 years or whatever the length of the contract you may want to have? Because ultimately, if you go through and tag him for 1 year and you are still interested in bringing him back the following year, the price is going to go up.
Yes, it is.
The longer you wait, the price goes up. And there is certainly not a lack of teams looking for a Lamar Jackson.
Oh my gosh.
And it's interesting to me, some of the teams that I've heard that might be looking at him too. For instance, one being the Miami Dolphins, I find very interesting because a lot of people would be satisfied with still having Tua Tagovailoa as their quarterback. But with his, let's say, fragility, I could understand Miami, who made the playoffs this year on the cusp of doing something maybe pretty darn good. They got Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill as wide receivers. Imagine adding a Lamar Jackson to that lineup. That would be scary.
Oh, that would be so awesome. But you said it. You've got Miami, you have the Falcons. And let's not talk about who knows what's going to happen with Derek Carr. Is he going to the Jets? Are the Jets going to hold out and try to get Aaron Rodgers if they can? And what's being reported out of the Packers is they're tired of Rodgers, but are they really tired of Rodgers? I mean, you've got a lot of movement that's going to happen. Seattle, are they going to stick with Geno Smith, or do they think they get a chance at Daniel Jones? There's a lot of movement going on.
And if Daniel Jones goes, who goes to the Giants?
There you go.
Because again, they're another young and up and coming team that made the playoffs this year and are primed to take that next step too. I mean, it'll be interesting because, in my opinion, obviously Lamar Jackson is that one domino that needs to fall first, or even Aaron Rodgers for that matter. But if the Packers don't want to bring back Rodgers, Rodgers is an interesting case for me because if I'm Aaron Rodgers, what really is there left for me to play for? Nothing. I mean, the money. I mean, that's really it. He's got the championships. He got the MVPs. I mean, he's done everything he can. He's just thinking about this perhaps in a little bigger dynamic than, say, Tom Brady, who was able to keep going until he was 105 years old. Whereas Aaron Rodgers, you want to keep playing in Lambeau Field until you're 45? I don't think I would.
I don't know. If I'm Rodgers, I really might look at. I'm from Berkeley. Well, I played at Berkeley. Do I want to go back to the warm climate? Because Carr's gone. That's wide open for you if you want to go to the Raiders. Do I really want to go to the Jets? Do I really want to play in New York? I mean, I just look at the situation. I mean, and then when you talk about the Giants, you can only franchise tag one player. So do you do Daniel Jones and cough up, what, $32 million? Or do you do Saquon Barkley and come off, what, $10, $11 million? You got to do something.
This next month and a half or so until the draft is going to be fascinating. Fascinating for sure. Because, again, like you're just talking about with the Giants, you've got Jones and Barkley, who they have to make decisions on. The Cowboys have Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott that they have to make decisions on. I can completely understand Lamar Jackson saying, you know what? I give you guys plenty of opportunity for a negotiation for a new deal.
Right.
And to me, it seems like you don't want me anymore. So I'm going to go look somewhere else.
Just let him go. If you're going to let him go, let him go. Because you played the game, and everybody kept saying this. You're going to play this game, and you're going to lose. because it doesn't matter which tag you put on this guy. You are dealing with $40+ million for 1 year. You gambled and you lost. And the biggest thing, Bank, that kind of cracks me up is when I look at let me pull this up because I thought it was just fascinating. Deshaun Watson's contract isn't just the value of the contract at $230 million. This is why the league or the owners are so upset with him. And it wasn't just the average of $46 million a year, but it wasn't, and it also wasn't the total guaranteed of $230 million. It was the full guarantee of $230 million. Because even though Patrick Mahomes has a massive $450 million contract of $45 a year, total guaranteed at $141, his full guarantee is only $63 million. So I'm sorry, pay the man, keep him. If you don't want him, stop playing the games and let him put himself out in the market, because he's going to garnish somewhere between $45 to $49 million. So that's my take on him.
Well, and what I find interesting too is that you look at somebody like Derek Carr, who was able to get a guy like Devontae Adams off of Green Bay away from Aaron Rodgers, and now Devontae Adams is stuck as a Raider without his buddy Derek Carr. So the shuffling of the deck, so to speak, from all of these teams is, as a team, you got to make calculated risks, but you also have to as a player too. So, I can't fault a guy like Lamar Jackson who wants to go get paid $300 million somewhere, whether it's with Baltimore or Miami or whoever else wants to give him that money.
I can't do that either. But I'll tell you what, we're going to pick up this and NBA in the second quarter. You listen to TNC Radio.live.
Hey drivers, did you hear music on TNC Radio.live that you really liked? Or maybe you heard us interview an author of a book you'd like to read or listen to. You can get the books, music, and other products you hear about by going to our website at www.tncradio.live and clicking on the shopping cart.
This blog on tncradio.live is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. Common mistakes truck drivers continue to make. Getting into a car wreck is a risk everyone takes from driving a vehicle. Safety's not guaranteed while driving. Although you may be alert and driving safe, others may not. Wrecks of any kind are almost always traumatic. Wrecks that include heavy-duty trucks can be even more horrific because their injuries can be more severe and life-threatening. Truck drivers go through a long, extensive training process and must pass several exams to get their CDL. Even though truck driving school prepares truckers for life on the road, there are still mistakes truckers continue to make. Speeding. There may be some instances where you're running late to get a load delivered on time, so you speed to get there. Speeding is dangerous for all drivers. Going over the speed limit is not only illegal, it's risky and can lead to injuries or even death. Avoid speeding at any time. It's better to arrive late than risking your life and others. Rollover. Truck rollovers are due to a driver taking a turn too fast, inexperience, or load size. Rollovers tend to happen when drivers get too comfortable behind the wheel and forget to take extra precautions while driving. Remember to always pay attention and be aware of what you're hauling. Tailgating. Tailgating or following too close is something every driver should avoid. Driving too close behind a vehicle is extremely dangerous for heavy-duty truck drivers due to the weight and momentum of the truck. Keep your distance while driving. There should be at least 3 seconds between each vehicle on the road. Driving while tired. Sleep is very important for the overall well-being and safety of a truck driver. Due to the long hauls, truckers rarely get the recommended 8 hours of sleep every night. Truck drivers can drive up to 11 hours a day for 7 consecutive days. Drivers who fail to follow these guidelines put their lives and others at risk. Blind spots. Semi-trucks are notorious for their blind spots. Most blind spots are due to the inability to see when looking through a rear view or side mirror. Truckers must always be aware of their blind spots while driving. Failing to do so can result in serious injuries. Distracted driving. It's hard not to get distracted on the road when driving for 11 hours a day. Common distractions are eating while driving, Looking at the GPS, texting, and talking on the phone, truck drivers should avoid texting and driving at all times. They should also consider investing in a headset to use when talking on the phone while driving. Weather conditions. When the weather changes, drivers need to adjust their speed and distance between other cars. Driving too fast and close in the rain or snow can result in a severe accident. There may be times when it's not safe to drive even after reducing the speed. Make sure to never drive when you feel uncertain of the weather conditions. This blog was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
Join Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Time for Women Road Warriors on your driver navigation station, tncradio.live.
Welcome back to Clutch Time Sports on tncradio.live. You can also go out to Twitter or Instagram and check us out. Our handle is Clutch Time TNC. We always like to hear from you. Post some really cool sports things. Maybe you might have found something that we didn't reach, what I call the ESPN Top 10. I like when you find those little nuggets of high school sports, of someone doing something spectacular or something that that's just mind-blowing.
Yeah, we're always in the mood for suggestions for Trey Ranks too. By the way, if you see an interesting sports nugget or something that made you smile that perhaps is worthy of mentioning, by all means, send us a DM or something on Twitter or Instagram and shoot us a note anytime. Absolutely. At Clutch Time TNC, by the way, on both of those platforms. So shameless plug there.
No, plug it all the way. I'm waiting for somebody to challenge us out there. I guess maybe we have to challenge them, and they'll do it in reverse or something
maybe.
of that nature. So, JB, we were talking a little bit off the air because I was going to go to men's college basketball a little bit and talk about the rankings, and I was just saying to you off air, like, wow, I can't believe how good Houston and Alabama is playing. And you dropped some news on me because I have not been paying attention to that specifically, but you were saying that the situation in Alabama is kind of rising up, and things aren't looking good for them.
It's crazy. It's I find it very hard to be in the position of. It feels like we're in a society right now that you're guilty until proven innocent, and not the other way around anymore. It feels like. Right. So, but in one way, shape, or form, if you haven't heard, there is a now former Alabama men's basketball player who's been charged to capital murder charges for killing a 23-year-old woman. Darius Miles from the team has been let go of the team. Well, it got released today that one of his teammates, who's Brandon Powell, I think was the name of it, just left his name off of the... Anyway, one of his teammates actually brought him the gun that killed that lady, and he's still on the team. He's not been charged with anything yet. Yeah, it's a freshman, Brandon Miller, and he's actually playing tonight in the game at South Carolina. But yeah, it's just a sad situation. I mean, you and I both talk about this all the time, Ivan, and the fact that we want to make this a platform that is uplifting and positive, and sometimes it's just hard to ignore. I mean, you talked about Deshaun Watson in the first quarter of this show, and you can't ever now talk about Deshaun Watson and not think of his exploits or his alleged exploits.
Exactly.
And it just is a shame that the news cycle is filled with all of these stories, and you're in a rock and a hard place if you're the University of Alabama, or either the athletics department or just the school as a whole. I mean, I can understand the outpouring of people that say, this freshman Brandon Miller who furbished the handgun in this murder is still allowed to even be on the team and playing. I would think at minimum you would have him be sitting out and maybe not released from the team yet, but just away from everything until you figure out what the heck is going on.
You would think that would be the case, but in our society, and we can be very frank about this, if you have a certain amount of notoriety, a certain amount of money or position, you're not necessarily treated the same. I mean, if he was just an everyday person, his situation would definitely be a lot different.
And that's sad
Yeah, it is.
because there should be similar rules for everybody.
I agree with you. I completely
I know
agree
we
with
don't
you.
live in that kind of a society, but unfortunately, Alabama is the number 2 school in the rankings, for men's college basketball, and Brandon Powell's one of the best players on the team. So I understand Brandon Miller. I don't know why I keep saying Brandon Powell. Brandon Miller.
Thinking of football.
Yeah, you're probably right. I start saying Brandon Marshall next, I think, after that. But anyway, I understand the team wanting to try to keep going. I mean, we're getting really close to March Madness already, which doesn't seem possible. But
Is that crazy?
yeah, it's just sad that a very entertaining men's college basketball season is being marred with a story like this. It's just sad.
It is, and you're right. It's been a year of good sports. Houston #1, Bama 2, Kansas 3. I mean, come on, Houston hasn't been won since 5 Slamma Jamma. The fact that they're playing phenomenal basketball. UCLA at 4, Purdue at 5, Virginia at 6, Arizona Wildcats at 7. It's just been really fun to turn on the TV on the weekday and catch a good college game. And I'm really excited about what's going to happen here in March Madness. I always get my big, huge paper, and I love the little thing that we do, Josh, but it seems like I never win. And someone who really doesn't know basketball is always the person that kind of wins. It's like, well, why did you pick that team? Oh, I like their uniform.
That
Like,
tournament
really?
challenge. Yeah. Yeah, Tom, we're going to have one of those for TNC Radio this year, like I know we did for Pigskin Pick'em during the NFL regular season. We'll have to get that bracket challenge for the March Madness tournament coming up here in a few weeks, which is, like I said, unreal that I'm even saying that that's coming up in a couple of weeks already, because we're a week from tonight will be March 1st already, which is scary.
It is absolutely insane. But hey, the years go by, the months and the weeks and so on. But JB, it's something about the NBA that's exciting and sad at the same time. And I'm a big NBA fan. You know that. I love the NBA. I love college football. If you guys have heard me or listened to me during college football time, I love college football. Absolutely. Love college basketball. I like the uncertainty of it because it's not, hey, let me have these 4 players and I'm going to win. I mean, you could show up on a Saturday in college football and the team you think is going to go out there and kill you, they wind up losing. So it's very fun. But I thought it was very interesting. I always like to say that the NBA will give you 2 things and take something away. So the NBA brought back during the All-Star weekend this past weekend, they had a phenomenal slam dunk contest that they haven't had in a long time. The skill challenge was great, and the 3-point contest was awesome. But what does that thing to take away? The actual All-Star game was horrible. It was bad. And it was probably one of the worst games in an All-Star anything that you would have ever seen. I honestly didn't even finish the game. I actually had to record it because my son was playing, and I came home and I started watching it. And once Giannis was out, LeBron was out, it was pretty much over for me. What's your thoughts, Bank, on that situation?
I totally agree with you, actually. And it's the same reason why I think they're probably going to have to start thinking about things the way the NFL sort of did with the flag football game this week. I still contend, and maybe it's because I'm a diehard baseball guy, but baseball's all-star game is still the ultimate all-star game of any of the major sports, because it's hard to fake throwing 90 miles an hour, and you still have to hit a ball that's coming at you 90 miles an hour. Even if you know that it's coming, you're still I'm amazed at the competitiveness still of the all-star game for the MLB. So what do you have to do? Maybe you have to put an incentive out there for the NBA All-Star game. I don't know what the actual answer is, but I agree with you. It's just boring. teams that are scoring 195 points or whatever it is, and having Jason Tatum score 55. I looked at the headline on ESPN. I'm like, Jason Tatum scores 55 points in a thrilling. I'm like, against what defense?
Exactly.
Okay, yeah. If somebody's going to be standing out there by themselves, shoot three balls, okay, Stephen Curry hit 16 threes in an All-Star game, or I think that's what it was last year.
Yeah.
Okay, that's whatever. But, I mean, you can't just go out there and say, oh, what a thrilling All-Star game because Jason Tatum scores 55 points. No, it was boring. I don't care how many lobs LeBron James does off of the backboard to himself for dunks. If there's no defense there, what's the point?
Well, last year it was good. And I think what it really says, in my opinion, to the league, this generation, they look at LeBron James at 38 years old, and actually they caught it on mic. I think he was playing against Memphis, and they were like, hey, dude, you played against my dad, as this player's talking to LeBron, and he's like, oh, dang, really? He's like, man, don't you feel old? And I'm sitting here going, if 38 is old, we have reached a new low in our society. I mean, we really have. But I think, and I'm hoping these young guys will understand, when you don't have LeBron James there, you don't have Steph Curry there, Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, Giannis couldn't play, you don't have those veterans who know how to put on a show. And what you normally would get is, you'd have 1 to 2 and sometimes 3.5 quarters of poo-poo basketball, but usually about the halfway mark of the third quarter through the fourth quarter, it was serious. Like, I want to win this. And you would see when you have a situation like this. Play basketball.
I'm Shelley Johnson with Kathy Tuccaro. You can hear us Tuesdays on TNCRadio.live at 8 p.m. Eastern on Women Road Warriors. And don't miss Steve Summers' Overnight Drive right here on TNCRadio.live. Weeknights, midnight to 5 a.m. Eastern. Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher Cortman, and now for the Mental Health Minute. I am wearing a black and white shirt cleverly to introduce a concept called dichotomous thinking. Dichotomous is two colors, black and white. And there are many people who think about issues in black and white. They don't know a gray area. What they typically do is see things as either all or none. They love it or they hate it. Best day ever, worst thing that could happen. Always a sense of catastrophic thinking and defeated. This thing is not going to work. It's terrible. It's also known as rigid thinking. And we have research that people who think rigidly or think dichotomously suffer more from depression and more from anxiety, more suicidal thinking. Why? Because of their inflexibility. One of the hallmark signs of physical health is flexibility. If you take a person who can bend down and touch his toes or her toes without bending the knees, that's a good sign, especially when compared to a person who could barely get past the knees. Well, the same thing's true about thinking. One of the hallmark signs of a healthy person emotionally is their flexibility. They have the ability to roll with the punches. Things don't always go your way in life. But the flexible thinker is able to say, that's okay, we'll work it out. The new restaurant has a 2-hour and 45-minute wait. No, we're not waiting that long. Let's try this other place. The movie we wanted to see, it's sold out. That's all right. We'll catch up to it in a couple of weeks. Let's go see this one. The flexible thinker finds a way to survive. The dichotomous thinker causes issues for self and for others. Practice being a little more flexible. Now I got to change my shirt.
It's Landline Now, followed by Steve Summers' Overnight Drive every night on TNCRadio.live starting at 11 p.m. Eastern and 10 p.m. Central.
Welcome back to Clutch Time Sports. I had to do that like Tom Kelly. You know, I just had to make it sound Tom Kelly-ish. You know, you have to do that.
That's not possible. Not
I
possible.
know.
There's only one and only Tom Kelly.
Welcome back to TNC Radio.live. Again, Clutch Time Sports, co-host Ivan Anderson. It is that time of the day we get to sit back, relax, taking a little bit of a cool breeze. At least on a warm day, that is. I can't say that for those of you dealing with snow. But the last 4 years, we done won Trey Ray.
All right, everybody, welcome to Trey Rangs, the time of the show. It's the third quarter where we take three things from the world of sports that made us laugh, made us smile, just were genuinely fun stories from the week. And Ivan, it might be a singer's worst nightmare, but it's often said that the Star Spangled Banner is one of the hardest songs to sing. Well, if you were to sing "Oh Canada" first, then you might not want to worry about what the USA is all about at all at this point. So during a recent Boston Bruins home game against the Ottawa Senators, the dedicated Bruin national anthem singer Todd Angeli stepped out into his familiar position on the ice and heard the organ blare its first few notes and started singing, "Oh, say," and then all the color rushed to his face as he saw all the scoreboard displays waving the Canadian flag. He put his finger up, stopped, laughed. The organist stopped, and then he grinned and reset right into the Canadian national anthem. Oh, cat. Anyway, a lighthearted moment on President's Day afternoon in what has been pretty much a near flawless season for the Bruins, who did end up winning that game and moved to, get this, Ivan, they are now 43-8-5 on the season.
The Bruins?
The Boston Bruins are ridiculously good right now.
Wow.
But congrats to Todd Angeli for being a pro and taking that in stride, because you got two national anthems that both start with "oh," and then if you're not paying attention, you're going into Canada or the USA at that point. So congrats, Mr. Angeli. Okay, reg number 2. Ivan, we don't talk a lot about NASCAR or racing in general here, but my boss and a couple of my...
Wait, hold on just a second.
Accompanied by Bruins organist Ron Poster, please
here we
welcome
go.
Todd Angeli. Oh, can you see?
The video's even better.
Oh, Canada.
Took it right in stride.
Our home and native land. True patriot love.
Yeah, even Marchand and some of the other guys for the Bruins you can see them laughing, but yeah, he took it right in stride and kept going. That was well done, Mr. Kelly. Well done.
Awesome.
Yeah, if you guys can go look at the video on YouTube, on ESPN is where I found it originally. But yeah, just one of those things. As you know, Ivan, I sing on our worship team at church. I've sang for a long, long time. I mean, aside from maybe your confidence monitor with the lyrics going out, just starting to sing the wrong song is probably your worst nightmare at that point. Yes. Like, oh, wait a minute. It's supposed to be, like I said, when you're singing two songs that both start with, "Oh, can you see?" Too funny. All right. Thank you, Mr. Keller. Rank number 2. Again, we don't talk a lot about NASCAR racing here in general, but as I mentioned, my boss and our friend Aaron, and one of my producers that I work for actually were at the Daytona 500 in Florida this last weekend. And if you didn't see the highlights or read the story about this, it was basically something out of a movie script. There were 52 lead changes among 21 drivers. only 3 in-race cautions over the race's first 198 laps, and then 3 over the final 13 laps, 10 run in overtime. Eventually, a stunned champion that hadn't won a race in 5.5 years, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., won the race in overtime. It took him 2,060 days since July 1st of 2017, and only his 3rd win in a decade. And, of course, one of them was the granddaddy, the Daytona 500, the Super Bowl of NASCAR. It had to be the Super Bowl trophy of racing, of course. The Daytona 500 has become nothing short of a chaotic scene of unpredictability, though, for nearly 30 years. If you want chaos, Ivan, how about the fact that the last pole sitter to actually win the race was Dale Jarrett back in 2000?
Holy cow.
Which doesn't feel like it should be 23 years ago already, but the year 2000 was 23 years ago already. Or the fact that Davey Allison is the last driver to lead the race at the halfway mark and win. And that was back in 1992. So
wow.
I guess you could probably say that you could skip the first half of the Daytona 500 and not miss anything, because the last half is always going to be chaotic. But there's Mr. Stenhouse, who actually wasn't even in the lead at all until overtime, and he came in and won that one, the Daytona 500. So congratulations, Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
Yay.
All right, rank number 3. It still wasn't like the heyday, but, when MJ battled Dominique. But we kind of touched about this a little bit in the second quarter, Ivan. But let's give Mac McClung and the rest of the NBA stars props for a fun and memorable weekend. And I'm not talking about the actual game itself, because that was garbage. McClung put on a show with 3 perfect 50s in the dunk contest and got everyone buzzing with his prime time moves. I love the one where he took the ball in midair, bounced it, or hit it off of the backboard and reversed it in. That was ridiculous. And then Damian Lillard took his first 3-point shooting victory in over the weekend as well. And Jose Alvarado was spectacular in the Rising Stars Challenge. I don't know if you saw any of that game. See, that game is entertaining. Those guys want to go out there and put on a show.
Yeah.
And as a nod for my love of the WWE, will forever be strong, how about a shout out to The Miz, Mike Mizanin? He nailed a 3 from half court in the celebrity game that he thought had actually won the game, but eventually was ruled that they left his hand a second late and it didn't count. So even the celebrity game had its controversy, as The Miz nearly sank, or he did sink a half court shot, but it was a little late in the Rising Stars, the celebrity game. So it was a fun weekend aside from the game. And one of the things I wanted to mention, Ivan, as we were running out of time there in the second quarter, maybe it's just me when it comes to the actual game, but I think the NBA has gone a little too far with its gimmick. With this draft and guys owning their teams and getting to select like their own teams. What happened to East versus West and the pride that brought these teams? I miss the days where each player wore their own jersey from their own team and their own, representation to be out there on the court. Because, ultimately that's what it's all about, right? You're representing your city. You're representing your team. You're representing your franchise. So when you're getting out there and you're basically wearing these bright metallic covered jerseys and everything else that they've had over the last several years, I just think that the NBA has kind of gone a little bit too far away from the purity of the game. And again, this almost goes back to the conversation we had at the end of last week's show with what has happened with Major League Baseball, but with all their rule changes. But I think sometimes you just get a little too cute and do things a little too much, and it just takes away from what it is, and it's a celebration of the stars of the game.
You have a very valid point. What started this whole drafting aspect of the All-Star game, or weekend, I should say, really started back when you saw a tilting of the league. It wasn't balanced. And you had more, stars and more powerful teams in the West, and everyone could see it. You could take the best East team. They just couldn't match up against the worst West team. And so they just started doing that. That doesn't bother me, having the jerseys be East and West. I kind of like that. Mainly because in basketball, it's easy to get confused who's on your team because it's a different game. It's a very fast-paced game. But I think one of the things they need to implement is a veterans rule that if you're of a certain number of experience, you're automatically there. You get your votes, and even if you miss that necessary voting, because I think what happened is you just had guys that just, with this load management that's really hit the league and all these weird things, trying to save themselves, and it's not working out. I think they need to go back and tweak it a little bit more, but I think they really need to think about the veterans that need to show up there to show these guys how to put on a show.
Industry movement
Amber,
Trucking
that's my
Moves
2
America
cents.
Forward is telling the story of the industry.
TNCRadio.live.
Our safety champions,
We'll be back for
the
the
women
fourth quarter.
of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com.
The info blog on tncradio.live is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. A truck driver's guide to balancing work and home life. Truck driving is hard and demanding work. Becoming a truck driver means spending many hours and days on the road. You'll sacrifice a lot for your trucking career. For many long-haul truck drivers, it's hard to separate life at work from life at home. Learning how to have a balance between home life and work life is essential if you want to have a long-lasting career in trucking. Check out our guide to balancing work and home life for truck drivers. Get enough sleep. Getting the recommended amount of sleep each night is a rare thing for truckers. Although sleep may be difficult for truckers because of the uncomfortable way of living, it's essential to their well-being and safety. Start prioritizing sleep and make a sleep schedule. Set an alarm for a certain time and turn off all electronics and get your much-needed sleep. Not enough sleep can make life on the road miserable. Exercise often. Due to the many hours of sitting each day, truckers start to experience body pain and health issues. Not exercising and taking care of your health can cause a lot of problems in the long run. You could be out of a job and possibly out of work. Eat healthy. Having your truck stocked with healthy snacks and meals while you're on the road will help teach you how to have a healthy work-life balance. Start making it a habit to go to the grocery store before you head out on the road. Also, avoid eating at fast food restaurants and truck stops. Do not think about work when you're at home. Whether you love trucking or hate it, you've probably thought about your job while you're off the clock. It can be difficult to separate the two. Thinking about work too much while you're at home can make you anxious, sleep-deprived, and put you in a bad mood. Instead of worrying about work, try picking up a new hobby or exercising. Spending time with friends and family can also get your mind off things. Make time for family. It doesn't matter if you're on the road or at home. Make time for family. Make it a priority to talk to someone in your family once a day. It can be tough for truckers, especially OTR truckers, to maintain relationships with their family due to the trucking lifestyle. Keeping in contact with your loved ones will help life on the road be less lonely. For more information, be sure to check out the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
TNCRadio.live, your commercial driver navigation station.
Welcome back to Clutch Time Sports. I'm your co-host, Ivan Anderson, along with my main man, Josh Banker. JB, I kind of want to pick up what we were talking offline, kind of go back to NFL football, and you and Mr. Tom Kelly, our producer, who's doing a phenomenal job. He's completely under the weather, but he's here, folks. He showed up, and he's doing his thing, and you yourself a little bit under the weather. But can we go back to Purdy? I want to talk about him. I think I had started saying as we were starting to come back in that he's done enough on the field that I can't see a team saying no if he takes his time and does this surgery correctly.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and the surgery that he had planned for has been delayed because there's still swelling there, and it's just too risky to do anything now because you may have to do more later. And the Niners are in a decent position to where they still do have Trey Lance, but he's still an unproven commodity in as much as he just hasn't had a lot of game reps over the last 4 or 5 years. Even when he was in college, he didn't play a ton either and had an issue with not playing through COVID and everything else. So it's going to be interesting for them, but I know you wanted to talk about the franchise tag a little bit more as well.
Yeah, I want to get into that whole situation with Tony Pollard and the Cowboys. And, I was reading that Zeke just really wants to stay there. So he's willing to renegotiate his contract, which in my books, I would just let them release me if that's what they want to do. But he wants to stay at Cowboys, and Tony just works better. I think Zeke is a great running back, but unfortunately, running backs in the NFL have gotten, they don't have the 5-year longevity they used to have. It's getting to the point where you've got 2 and 3 years.
Shelf life is certainly not as long as a lot of the other positions on the field for sure.
Not at all. So the question is, I'm just kind of pondering, why does he want to stay?
Well, because right now, I mean, he's still got a 3 years left on his contract, and the nice thing for the Cowboys is that none of that money's guaranteed. So Pollard is an unrestricted free agent, and they can sign him or even franchise tag him for I think it was between $10 and $11 million is what the franchise tag would be for a running back. And if Elliott really does want to stay there and they want to give him money, I think Elliott's got to be reasonable in his expectations on the kind of money he's going to get if they want to keep both guys, because I don't think that Elliott realizes that maybe he does, that he's not going to be a featured back, and he hasn't really been over the last couple of years. I think thankfully for them, the Cowboys have actually had an offense that can feature both of those guys, and it's a nice luxury to have, and I think the Cowboys can afford both of them. But it's just interesting because the running back, especially now, is not the premier position that it was, say, even in the early 2000s or the 90s. I mean, you don't have the bell cows anymore. You don't have the LTs. You don't have the Peytons. You don't have the Emmitt Smiths. You don't have those guys anymore. You got to be versatile as a running back, and thankfully for the Cowboys, both of those guys are great pass catchers. They're both good runners, obviously, and they both can block out of the backfield too. So I mean, it's a blessing of riches for the Cowboys, but it comes at a price.
It really does. Now I want to get your opinion, man, on Jalen Hurts. I mean, he's already had his wide receiver come out and say, "Look, pay the man, or I'd like to leave." What do they do? Do they give him a 4-year deal?
If the Philadelphia Eagles haven't paid any attention to the Baltimore Ravens situation. Seriously, and Jalen Hurts is kind of in the same bucket. You go and you sit back and see how Lamar Jackson has been treated by the Ravens in this somewhat negotiation, if you even want to call it that. I would want, if I'm AJ Brown or whoever it is on that team with Philly, I would want Jalen Hurts to be a Philadelphia Eagle for a long time as well. And I think the Eagles would be dumb to let him go.
It's so funny. We're talking about Philly. We're talking about Baltimore. We're talking about the Seahawks. We're talking about the Giants. I mean, come on, man. We can't even talk about the Steelers. The question I have as a Steeler fan, and I hope there's some Steeler fans that are listening to this. If you are a Steeler fan, you have to be very upset that you are hearing the names of Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Daniel Jones, Aaron Rodgers, and you don't hear a doggone Steeler coming up. That name, Steelers, are talking about being in the mix to go after one of these quarterbacks. This is always my problem with my team. They're so enamored with defense that they don't realize that they need a guy under the pocket. Help me, Josh.
You play to win the game.
I mean, this is pathetic.
Yeah, it's they're at a rock and a hard place because they put all their eggs into that Kenny Pickett basket, at least for now. And
oh my God.
Do you give them a chance? Maybe you do. I mean, but you're right. They are so focused defensively that sometimes to their credit, they've had the luxury for so long of having a guy like Roethlisberger, whether you like him or not. He got him to the Super Bowl and won a Super Bowl. So, I mean, you had the luxury of having a rock there at quarterback for 15 plus years. And you get comfortable in a situation like that. And then all of a sudden he retires and you're kind of left like, oh, we didn't really build up a guy to be his backup. We really didn't have a plan B. And now should we be going maybe after Lamar Jackson? I mean, how awful would that be for Baltimore to have Pittsburgh steal Lamar Jackson out of your own division and put him on that team? I just don't see that happening. But yeah, I get that as a frustration point for all Steeler fans there.
Yeah, I mean, we have nothing.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm not with my money.
I know we could talk about NFL for a full hour, but we'd be remiss if we didn't. We got a couple minutes left here in this fourth quarter. We haven't talked about this at all over the last couple of weeks with the Super Bowl and everything else happening. But if you had to mark down right now the biggest impact player that moved during the NBA trade deadline, Durant, Irving, whoever you think it is, which guy do you think is going to be the one that brings the biggest impact to their team for this year?
AD, 100%.
Okay.
It's you've got Booker there. You've got Chris Paul, who's a phenomenal floor general. You have a great center in Ayton. You've got everything you need. And yes, I know you traded away some defensive players, but KD is a scoring machine.
Yeah, he's been a little fragile, though, over the last few years, and same with Chris Paul for that matter. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get that cohesion quickly enough. I'm still very intrigued by this Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic relationship.
It's not going to last.
Because they have such different dynamics as far as how they play the game. Kyrie is so much quicker and better scorer, I think, overall than Luka as far as his different types of shooting ability. But there's been a lot of interesting moves. Russell Westbrook now on the Clippers now. That's intriguing as well. I'll really be curious, especially after Paul George and Kawhi really have kind of lobbied to get him on that team. I actually really like what the Lakers did too. They got much younger, more athletic, better defensively. If LeBron and AD stay healthy, they could be a force if they just get into the playoffs.
I think they will get into the playoffs. I think they will get into the playoffs. I think Westbrook is on a good team. He'll be that superstar that they need because right now Paul George nor Kawhi can show you that they can stay on the court 100%. So I think that's something that they can use.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm a little surprised that my Warriors didn't do something, but they've been a little strapped as far as their ability to bring in money. They're probably more looking at somebody in a buyout situation. Kind of like with what Westbrook and the Clippers have had happen to them. But, one of the more underrated moves, I'm really curious to see how this Kevin Love to Miami thing goes, too. I think he's one of those guys that could be unsung and a pretty big piece for them in the East.
They need a veteran, and he's a good outside shooter, and he still has some ability inside.
Yep. Well, thanks, everybody. Appreciate you listening. Clutch Time Sports right here on TNCRadio.live. Check us out online Twitter and Instagram at